Добрый день, досточтимый Ринпоче. Очень рада вас приветствовать. Спасибо, что согласились сегодня дать мне интервью. Я уже как второй день думаю о вашем визите, как это хорошо, что вы смогли посетить нас здесь, калмыков, которые находятся в Нью-Йорке, потому что, как вы знаете, очень сейчас много нас здесь, и нам очень важно, чтобы вы, как учитель, к нам приехали, давали свое благословение, давали нам знания, потому что это не только объединяет нас, но и дает точку опоры, веру, будущее хорошее и а, согревает наши сердца и души. Вот. Сегодня такая тема, у меня для вас такой вопрос. А, Все знают вас как достопочтимого нашего Ламу, да? И так как мы сюда приехали, Калмыки, я стала интересоваться историей калмыцкого народа в США. Расскажите немного просто о себе, о вашей семье.
Mm.
А,
Okay, so my father, he was born in Kalmykia, and in modern day times, he's from Ikiburul. In ancient times, they call it Jijikin. That's where my father was born and raised. My mother, she was actually part of the Kalmyk immigrants that left in the late 1920s, early 1930s, that settled in Yugoslavia. So my mother is part of that Kalmyk group that settled in Yugoslavia. My mother was actually born in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, and my mother's parents, they came to Yugoslavia in the 1920s. Uh, my parents actually met here in America. My father uh, was married. Also, my mother was also married. Both of their spouses passed away, and my parents met, and together they had 4 kids, 4 boys. From my father's previous marriage, he had 2 sons and a daughter. My mother's previous marriage, she had 2 daughters. So altogether, I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters. I am the youngest one in the family. Uh, I don't know exactly what year they came to America, but I would say in the late 1940s, early 1950, that's when they came to America. And my father's family at that time settled in New Jersey. My mother's family settled in Philadelphia. I myself, I was born in Philadelphia, and at the age of 7, uh, I was sent to India to a Buddhist monastery. I was always interested in Buddhism as a child, and it was my wish to become a monk. And therefore, by the recommendation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, my parents decided to send me to India, and I grew up in India. Since I went at a very young age to India, I did not really grow up with my brothers and sisters. India was very far away, and I did not have the chance or opportunity to come and visit my relatives every year. I came to visit maybe every 3 years or 3 to 4 years. So I went to India in 1980. My first visit back home was in 1993. That was 2 months. And my second visit back home was in 1987. That time I was here for quite a long time, but nevertheless I went back to India. Then my third visit was in 1991. So you can see within 10 years, I only came to visit my relatives and family only 3 times. And those 3 times that I came was very, very short. So I had very little interaction with my parents, my grandparents, and also my uncle and aunts, and even my brothers and sisters. On my father's side, most of his relatives were left behind um, in Kalmykia. He had a sister, and also a brother as well. They all passed away. My father's younger brother, we call him Jaja Höcha, passed away last year. He lived in Priyutne. He lived in Priyutne. But I have cousins, first cousins. They all uh, lived in Ikeburul region in Priyutne, and they're still around. Yeah, they're still around.
Okay, it's very interesting to hear from you about your parents, relatives. Thank you. And the second question will be about Buddhism in our families here, in Kalmyk families here in Brooklyn, actually in all America, in all USA, because a lot of people
Right.
came.
So Buddhism is how I describe Buddhism. Yeah, there's two aspects of Buddhism that we should differentiate and understand. Buddhism as a religion is one matter, and number two, Buddhism as a culture, Buddhist culture. Buddhism as a religion, that is a individual right. Whether to believe or not to believe, that's an individual choice. There's no way that says you're born a Kalmyk, therefore you should be a Buddhist. Nor in any other religious community, there's no rule that says you're born a Christian, therefore you should be a Christian. So, believe or not to believe, that is an individual right. Now, Buddhist culture, when you say Buddhist culture is associated with society. So, therefore, our society is a Buddhist culture society. So, one Kalmyk can say that I'm not a Buddhist, but nevertheless, his culture is Buddhist. So, therefore, it is more associated with society or community. So there you have to make a difference between Buddhism as a religion and Buddhism as a culture. The early stage of immigrants, my grandparents, my parents' generation, when they first settled here in America, their first and foremost priority was preservation of Buddhist culture, preservation of Buddhist religion, preservation of language. And I'm sure you noticed the older generation, they've been here for 70, 80 years,
Yes.
and they still preserve Kalmyk language. They speak quite well. Even my older sisters and my brothers, they speak Kalmyk
Yes, I noticed
quite
this.
quite well. So when they came here, they worked very hard to establish huruls, because the hurul was a place, not only a religious place, but it was also a culture center where people would gather for religious purposes, for holidays, for culture purposes, and also for socializing. So they use these huruls as a base to keep their culture, identity, tradition, everything intact. So I think that was very beneficial, and I think that's one of the reasons why they have preserved their language quite well to this day. Um, then over time, due to various reasons, various conditions, various lifestyle, the older generation slowly declined because many of them passed away because of old age. Then their children moved to other states or cities because of careers, because of education, whatever it may be. And there was a time where the community was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And at the same time, there was that change in Russia, the collapse of the Soviet Union, family reunification, marriages, immigration for study purposes, for better life. That became a new trend or new movement. And the number of first immigrants declined, but there was a number of new immigrants that was coming from the beginning of the 90s. It grew, but at some point it kind of stopped. Not so many immigrated. And now we have the mobilization that took place. And because of that, I think this is probably the largest migration of Kalmyks to America since 2022. Right now, we don't know what the number is. We are trying to find out how many Kalmyks are here.
What do you think? How much?
Well, it's difficult to say because people say 5,000, people say 10,000. It's really difficult to get an official number. But nevertheless, there are some people trying to get a census of how many people is here. I'm also trying to get that, but it's very difficult to get the accurate information. But my judgment, I think there's probably at least 5,000 to 6,000 that came within the last year or so. It could be more than that, but we don't know yet. So I think the Khuruls here in America played a very important role for preservation of culture, preservation of language, preservation of our identity, preservation of our folklore, tradition, and so on. Now we have a new migration of Kalmyks coming to America, and I truly believe that they also have a very big responsibility, like the first immigrants, because our heritage, our culture is very rich and very worthy to preserve. So I think we're all here for same reason: better quality of life, freedom of consciousness, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and so on. And we all have that opportunity: freedom of consciousness, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and so on. So therefore, it gives us even much more freedom to think of ways of how we can implement different ideas, different projects for the preservation of our culture. And I think that the new generation, the new immigrants, have a much more bigger responsibility than the first immigrants here in America.
Okay, yes, I think so too. Now, how can we do this?
Yes, so I understand your question. So here's the thing. Registering a organization, that's the most easy part. Anyone can do that. But implementing the ideas of the organization, that's the most difficult part. We have to have a common interest and common objective. I alone, if I say I want to start a Kalmyk culture center, if you support this initiative, then it is easy to implement these ideas because I have the support from you.
Mhm.
Similarly, if I talk to other people and I have the support of other people, then it is easy to implement. But here, I think the challenge is that people just arrived. They are thinking about their own survival, their family survival. For them right now, that is a top priority. So, do they feel Kalmyk inside? Yes, they do. Do they worry? Yes, they do. But as of right now, as a community, that's not the main concern. Their main concern right now is to get residents, permanent residents, and slowly find job to set up a base in their life. So I think that's, of course, it's important, it's needed, but nevertheless, in the long run, we should not forget that how important it is to have a culture center or Kalmyk Buddhist culture center or whatever it may be. I think that's very important and can play a very important role for preservation of our rich heritage. Is it ready? Are people ready? Some people say yes, they are ready. Some people are not ready. So we have to think about it and react based on the reality of the situation, not react out of emotions. So I think that's very important for us to really keep in mind the importance of preservation of our culture and identity.
Okay, I see. And now my question will be about can you give advice to all Kalmyk people how they can improve their tolerance inside, compassionate?
Well, here's the thing. Tolerance can be understood in a very positive way, and also at the same time, it can be interpreted in a negative way. And I think here the tolerance that we usually talk about is the good tolerance, meaning being patient, tolerating the struggles that we are going through, tolerating the challenges that we go through right now. I know it's very challenging on so many levels, psychologically, emotionally, and also, culturally, language-wise. There's so many challenges that we are going through right now. If we are able to tolerate these temporary challenges, then we can overcome all the problems that we are facing right now for a better and brighter future. So, tolerance in this subject is being patient, being resilient is also very important. Resilience means going through hard time and uplifting yourself from those challenges, from those hard times, overcoming that hard times. That's what we call resilience. That's what we call being tolerant with the problems and also being patient with all the challenges that we go through and have. So therefore, it is very important for us. So therefore, it's very important for us to be very optimistic be very hopeful, and also to have faith. And when I say have faith, it doesn't mean have faith in some Buddha or Bodhisattva or some enlightened being, but having faith in ourselves that I can do it, I can achieve it, I can be patient, I can be tolerant, I can overcome, I can work hard, I can learn the language, I can study, and I can work hard. And this is what we mean by being tolerant. You're being tolerant with yourself. You're being tolerant with the problems that you have today. And through being optimistic, through being hopeful, through having faith in ourselves, many positive results will be accomplished.
Okay, I'm very thankful and appreciate this interview from you. It's very important to hear from you these words for us, all Kalmyk people in Brooklyn. Okay, thank you.